Hi, welcome everyone to our latest training. I'm going to introduce our room monitor, Gary Lockwood. He is a DTM and has been a member since 2014. Gary.
Daniel, thank you very much. Fellow Toastmasters, thank you for being here at LACE. I'm excited about our presentation this morning. Our presenter is Randy Kleinman. He is a DTM. He has served as Vice President of Membership for a President's Distinguished Club last year and has also served as Division Director for a President's Distinguished Division and also Area Governor for a President's Distinguished Area. He has been a member of Toastmasters since 2007, is a two-time member of the Founders District Leadership Committee, and was head of the Founders District Club Coach Program in 2017-2018. Everybody, please help me welcome our presenter this morning, Randy Kleinman.
Gary and Daniel, thank you very much. We have a tight schedule because precisely at 11:25, they will close up this room in favor of the next room. As a result, we have to start immediately. I know that people are still entering the room, but we have no choice but to get started. In a few minutes, you will be asked to take a quick poll to prove that you're here. And then at the end, you'll also be asked to take a quick poll. So it is necessary for you to hang around and answer the brief questions at the start and at the end. Now, this is Vice President membership training, so hopefully you're in the right room if you are VPMs or interested in the VPM situation. I'm not able to ask all of you what your status is, but I'm going to assume that most of you have been a VPM for 6 months and now you're in your second 6 months. Some of you may be brand new, and some others of you may have a lot of experience, but my assumption is that you have some experience, but don't know every possible thing. Now, I want to start with one little thing that often comes up in our discussions that people often are confused about, and that is how the structure of Toastmasters works. So very simply, the club is the big thing. The club is what got started first. Above the club is the area. There are 4 or 5 clubs in each area. Above that is the division. There's 4 or 5 areas in each division. And above that, there is the district, which is putting on this LACE training. So what we have is
Randy, the
Yes,
slide
Daniel.
is not moving. So it's still showing the first slide.
That's fine, because I don't want the slide to move yet.
Okay.
Do you see creating a quality club?
Yes.
You're perfect. We're not gonna move yet. Okay. I'm just giving the very basics of the club
I don't see
division.
I don't see the screen.
All right. How many people don't see the screen that says creating a quality club?
I see the screen.
Daniel, do you see the screen?
Yes, I see the screen. So I think the one person who didn't see the screen can chat with me on the chat room. I will try to help you. And the rest, please continue.
There is no chat room.
She can move those lines in the middle. That might be her problem if she has those all the way extended to the left. Those 2 white lines, they make your screen go bigger to the people or bigger to the PowerPoint.
Oh, I see now.
I have no video whatsoever.
I think you just dial in. You did not enter with the Zoom app. So maybe try to exit and click the link again, and this time allow your computer to open the Zoom app so that you can see everything.
It did not give me that option. I'm on my iPhone. I'm on my iPhone.
How about you call me? I will help you on the side. We will continue this.
What's your number?
626-277-5536. I will help you on the side.
5536. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We will continue since we have a limited amount of time. I'm going to change the screen now. Hopefully you will see the screen change. If you didn't see the screen change, okay, good. I see people have seen the screen change. The very first thing they want me to cover is the executive committee. By the way, I should say that these slides represent a whole new approach being taken by Founders District, and Linda Robinson and Abba Shah should get credit for it. They've put in hundreds of hours creating these slides and revamping them and changing them around. So this is the executive committee, and the idea here is to show you what the other members of your team do. You may have a general sense. One thing they've forgotten is the past president, who is part of the executive committee. And one thing you'll notice that isn't here is a vice president of sales. That's because there is no vice president of sales. And we will talk about how that role is handled within Toastmasters, because somebody has to actually bring in members. But for now, just note that we have a vice president of membership and a vice president of public relations. We do not have anybody called a vice president of marketing or a vice president of sales. This is the general agenda for our training today. We're going to cover member value, moments of truth, various club objectives, your specific role, and various tools you can use along with upcoming dates. In addition, there are 3 things that I want to add to this because I think they're important. The first one is they've asked me to talk a little bit about Zoom fatigue. The second is, how are you going to get members? People always ask that. How am I going to get members? That's covered to some extent, and I'll amplify on that. And finally, what's wrong with my club? There may be nothing wrong with your club, but if there is something wrong, we'll be able to spot it. And if there's something right with your club, you'll be able to spot that too. So I want to start out with talk about Zoom fatigue, because Linda and Abba said, let's talk about Zoom fatigue a little bit. Here's my take on Zoom fatigue, frankly. You may be surprised by this, but I think it doesn't exist. I think it doesn't exist because I hear people who watch television 3 hours a night. Do they get TV fatigue? No, they go back and watch television again for 3 hours the next night. I used to know people back when there were actually movie theaters. I used to know people who would go to movie theaters and see every new movie. Did they get movie fatigue? No, they loved the movies. There are also people who do Zoom. There are people who do YouTube. There are people who do TikTok, and they don't get fatigue. Why is that? Because they're having fun. So the trick is, for your meetings, if people start complaining about Zoom fatigue, what it means is they're not having enough fun. Now, I know what I think is fun. I think it's fun when there's car crashes and explosions and car chases, romantic stories, that kind of thing. Maybe your speeches could be a little more interesting. Maybe your table topics could be a little more fun. If they're exciting meetings, nobody's going to have Zoom fatigue. That's my take on Zoom fatigue. That's my suggestion for you is you won't hear about Zoom fatigue if you've got fun meetings. Now, it is true, maybe your eyes get a little sore. Turn your eyes away from the screen once in a while, adjust the contrast. But if there are fun meetings, people will watch forever just like they watch movies and television. How do club members find value? This is very important for a VP of membership because you want to know why people would become members and you want to know why people remain members. My own story is that when I was a brand new member, it all happened like magic. It happened like magic because I didn't have to do any work at all. I just came there and participated in the meeting. But it did occur to me that somebody had to do the work of creating these meetings, creating the club, and keeping it going. The officers are the people who do that. You are the ones that make sure the club continues to exist. Doesn't have to take a whole lot of work, but it takes a few things, which on the bottom left, you'll notice are leadership, planning, and also recognition. Leadership basically means that somebody's got to get started on it. Somebody's got to lead the way so a club exists and operates and has members. Planning means you can't think about it the day before the end of the Toastmasters year ends. You've got to plan ahead of time. Sometimes people call the first quarter of our Toastmasters year the golden quarter because you've got a whole year to plan and to do things. And finally, recognition is key because people love to be told when they're doing a good job. Club quality we're going to touch on in a second. And the value of Toastmasters is simply that we have self-paced learning. Now, that's not for everybody. We've all known members who have joined and then quit without giving a speech because they don't want to put in any work whatsoever. But 99% of people understand that you get out of it what you put into it. It's a self-paced program. You do what you want, which gives you a whole lot of freedom. Now I think it's time to do our poll because Daniel has a poll for you to make sure you're here. Daniel, can you run that poll? Do you need me to take down the screen share?
We can just run the poll on top of your screen share. So we're going to start now, and just
go for it.
Click one of the choices, and that's it. Very easy. Okay. We have 37 people, and we have 4 more people haven't answered yet. I think they might be on the phone, so they might not be able to see the poll. So I'm going to end the poll now, and everyone can see the result. All right. That's it.
Daniel, will you take care of the 3 that did not respond so that we know what to do about those?
Yes, I have a log of everyone who joined the meeting, so don't worry, you'll get your credit.
All right, great. Notice we give easy tests around here. I hope you appreciate that. Let's go on to the next slide. The next slide is moments of truth. This has to do with club quality. And Gary, if you would do me a favor and post moments of truth in the chat box. Hopefully Gary will have done that. Moments of Truth is a process that you can follow. And there's a document that's now been posted in the chat box that allows you to answer a number of questions about whether your club is operating well. It's really very good. It doesn't take much time. And the 6 items that you see on the screen, things like first impressions, membership orientation, are the general categories where these things happen. And I think it's very valuable. A lot of clubs like to use moments of truth every year to see if their clubs are doing things successfully. Now, I promise to tell you what you're doing if your club is going wrong. And that is something that moments of truth can help you with. But I'll give you a few key thoughts. I've probably visited 25 clubs since I've been a Toastmaster. And what I've seen is that the clubs that fail often don't have any marketing at all. They're not looking for new guests. They're not looking for new members. And so when they lose a lot of members, well, it's a surprise. So always thinking about members and membership is a good idea. Another thing is some clubs have just forgotten to have fun. And people just want to have a good time. So yes, if you have a bunch of really serious people, maybe they want a serious club. But most people want to enjoy their hour or hour and a half of Toastmasters. And you can ask, of course. Moments of Truth is a way of asking. And then another item is that sometimes you have a core group of members, longtime members, and they don't let in those people on the edge that just joined, those poor fringe members. Let them be part of your group. Include them, and they're more likely to stay as members. Ask questions. People will tell you what they're thinking. So that's Moments of Truth. It's a very useful document. Personally, I think that every single club should go through it once a year to get a sense of whether they're doing things right. This next slide is called Founders District Club Objectives, but I call it the cheerleading slide, the rah-rah cheerleading slide. You probably all know these things. Yes, they want you to go for President's Distinguished status. They want you to get your members renewed. They want you to enroll in Pathway. All of this stuff you know already. So I'll give you a few thoughts about why these things matter. First of all, the Distinguished Club program is something developed after many years by Toastmasters to measure whether a club is doing the right things to thrive. When I first joined Toastmasters, I thought it was the stupidest thing. I thought it made no sense whatsoever. After I'd been a member for 2 or 3 years, I started to notice that the clubs who did the Distinguished Club program thrived. They had enough members, they were doing things that were fun, everything was happy there. The clubs that refused to follow it eventually failed. I've seen that over and over again over the years. I've been a member for 13 years, and I can tell you that the Distinguished Club program works because I've seen it many, many times, and I was not a believer to start with. The next thing, member news renewal. Some of you are going to say to me, there's a pandemic going on. My club membership is down. Yes, that's true. The Toastmasters demographics show that the pandemic has somewhat hit our clubs. Less than I would have thought. Membership is down somewhat. However, there are a lot of people out there that are a little bit bored and would be thrilled to just spend some time at a meeting once a week or once every 2 weeks. We're going to talk about what we can do to get new members in and to retain members. But the pandemic by itself should not totally destroy your club. Pathways, we'll talk about pathways in more detail. And for officers trained, if you're here, your officers are starting to get trained, and that's good. Without trained officers, you can hardly know what you need to do. By the way, I will answer questions at the end. I don't have time to be checking the chat box. So what I'll be doing is going through this, and then at the end, we'll have ample time for questions. This next slide is the success plan that the Founders District turns out, and it gives you the items for the Distinguished Club program. There's other things too, but we're only seeing part of it here. There are 10 goals in the Distinguished Club program, and of course, you probably know that, but I want to point out a few things of interest. One is that the last 2 goals, what are called the training goals and the administration goals, these are idiot simple to get because all you have to do is do them. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to be really diligent. The first is training goals. Just show up for training and answer really tough questions like our first poll. It's not hard. The second is administration goals. You just communicate your administrative status to Toastmasters International. It's not that hard to do. Now, the first 8 goals are a little more difficult. The first 6 are educational goals. And the toughest one is number 3, 2 more level 2s. Under the old system, the toughest one was getting 2 more CC manuals finished. And this is more or less the equivalent, 2 more level 2s. But you don't have to do it because President's Distinguished status is 9 out of 10 goals. So if that one's tough, don't get discouraged because it's only number 3 on the list. That doesn't mean it's the 3rd easiest. The ones at the end tend to be a lot easier. Now let's go to the membership goals. This is your particular interest as a VP of membership. The membership goals are 4 new members and then 4 more new members. You might say, oh my gosh, why do I have to have 8 new members in a year? The reason is because we've seen over many years of Toastmasters operations that typically there is a turnover of 8 members in a year. A club with 20 members will have about 8 leave. You might say, why? Why would 8 members leave? I can tell you in one of the clubs that I'm a member of, we had 3 members in the last 3 years die. They were not young, but nevertheless, people do eventually die, and they're not coming back. They're not going to be members again. We've had members who've moved out of state. We've had members who have taken new jobs where they could not spare their lunchtime, because it's a lunchtime club, could not manage to get away from lunch for lunch. So there are all sorts of reasons why people drift away. Some may not like the club. And if you're asking questions regularly as to whether people's goals are being met, you may know whether it's meeting their needs or not. Some may have health problems. There's a lot of reasons. But the thing is, 8 members a year is what you need to be coming up with. Not you alone, but your whole executive team. Now, there's some math here. This is going to be tough math. If you have 12 months and you have 8 new members, how often do you need to get a new member? Every 6 weeks, every month and a half. So you need a new member every 6 weeks. Members may sort of magically occur. Somebody may show up out of the blue and immediately join at that meeting, but usually that's not how it happens. Usually you need to have guests. You need to have guests to create a member. The typical rule is, based on lots of years of experience, I can tell you that about 1 guest out of every 3 guests becomes a member. So if your success ratio is 1 out of 3, you're probably doing okay. If it's lower, you might want to go to Moments of Truth and say, what am I doing wrong? If it's higher, congratulations, you're a great club. To get 3 guests in order to have a member in 6 weeks, you really need a guest every 2 weeks. So that's what you should be thinking in terms of is, can we get a guest to our meeting every 2 weeks? That may sound hard, but it really isn't, because all of your members could give you the name of a guest who might be invited to show up. Your listing at Toastmasters International, all clubs are listed there, may yield you guests out of the blue because they found that your club is the closest to where they live or work. Now, that doesn't work for closed clubs, of course, but for open clubs that are community clubs, they're going to find their way to you, a certain number of people. But if not enough, then you need to be looking for a guest every couple weeks. It's not impossible by any means. Doesn't have to be a lot. The VPM is a good leader for that. Just ask yourself, have we been getting a guest every 2 weeks? If not, maybe I should ask around and see if we can come up with a name this time to invite. Lots of possibilities. For example, my daughter joined one of my Toastmasters clubs. You can have family members, you can have relatives, you can have friends, you can have coworkers. We'll get into some of that in a little while. The Distinguished Club program has goals that you can see if you've met by going online to what's called performance reports. I think everybody should go on at least once a month and find out how you're doing. You will probably know about the membership, but you may not know about the educational goals unless you check with your VPE. This is how you can find out whether your clubs are keeping up with the goals. Now, this particular screenshot is Saddleback Sunrise Speakers, and it was taken, I think, 2 months ago when they already had 5 out of 10 goals met. They're a club that often gets up to 10 goals, and I think that's why the screenshot was done. And yet you'll see that goal number 3, 2 more level 2 awards, hasn't been reached yet. It's the hardest. No reason that you have to feel that, oh my gosh, we're doing something wrong. No, focus on the things you can do. We will see in a while how you get to performance reports, but keep in mind that anybody can go see them. If you want to know about any other club, it's easy enough to just go to performance reports and say, gee, I wonder how so-and-so's club is doing. I think we ought to do better than them. So that is something that you can check. Now you guys are so lucky. You get to see a movie. It's a 5-minute movie, and it's Toastmasters International's approach to your becoming a club VPM. If you can't see it after it gets started, I would suggest that you contact in chat Daniel Fung, but hopefully none of you will have any great problem seeing it. It'll take a few minutes to boot up.
Congratulations. Your club elected you their Vice President Membership, or VPM. This means that your fellow club members think that when it comes to membership building and retention, you're the best person for the job. That's quite an honor. More than just an honor, your term as VPM is a great opportunity for you to develop your leadership skills. Ready to get started? Now, you might be wondering how to go about increasing your club's membership and retaining its current members. That's a great thing to be wondering. And what's more, it's just the focus of this session. This session breaks down your responsibilities into specific duties and points out helpful resources to use along the way. Here we go. Your responsibilities as VPM can be divided into 3 categories: meeting quality, club success, and member relations. To learn more about the specific duties in each category, select one. Meeting quality. 2 duties to do with meeting quality. The first is to manage all the paperwork involved in the application process. It's important for you to become familiar with the application forms so you can quickly and clearly take a joining member through the steps. New members who experience a professional and organized application process will feel reassured about their decision to join. Collect initial dues payments and applications, and make sure the applications are completed correctly. You also keep track of guests who have not yet joined and members who have not been attending meetings. Follow up with them. Encourage guests to join and members to recommit to the club. The second part of your meeting quality duty is to ensure consistency with Toastmasters branding guidelines. The brand is not only the logo, colors, and the design of materials, it is also how your Toastmasters club makes you feel. Joining Toastmasters means having a safe, supportive, and nurturing environment in which to develop your skills and become the speaker and leader you want to be. That is the Toastmasters brand. Your job as Vice President Membership is to support that brand. Along with using the correct colors, logo, and design elements in the correct way, you also make sure that your club offers its members a rewarding experience. Club success. The club success aspect of your duties involves the growth of your club. This responsibility can seem daunting, but broken down, it becomes manageable. One easy goal you can set is to add 1 new member per month. This doesn't mean you do all the work recruiting members. Use your leadership skills to inspire and motivate current members to spread the word about Toastmasters. Another easy way to promote membership growth in your club is through membership building programs. There are 4 Toastmasters sponsored programs every year. 1, the Smedley Award. 2, Talk Up Toastmasters. 3, Beat the Clock. And 4, the Membership Building Program for individuals. Encourage members to participate in these programs, but don't feel limited to just these. Promote your own club membership program too. Just remember that the goal is at least 20 members by year end. With your aim to add 1 member a month, plus all the membership building programs, club growth is a breeze. Member relations. The third category of VPM responsibilities is member-focused. Your relationship with members is a key aspect of your role as VPM. Having strong, healthy relationships with members drives the success of your club. Part of having a good relationship with your members is keeping the lines of communication open. As VPM, you need to know why members join Toastmasters and what they want to accomplish. Knowing their goals and their motivation for joining enables you to serve them more effectively. Find out how satisfied the members are and where they could use extra support and encouragement. Developing a good relationship with your fellow club members also involves celebrating their successes. When you accomplish a goal, you feel confident and inspired to tackle another goal. That feeling is even stronger when your success is recognized. Members need to be recognized for their dedication and perseverance. By being involved and supportive, you make a positive impact in the lives of club members. Remember, your fellow members chose you as VPM because they know your guidance and support are exactly what they need. You've just completed the Vice President Membership Responsibility session. By doing so, you've...
Terrific. It's actually a pretty good set of slides. I would add only two things. You may notice they talked about one member a month. I had said, oh, just one member every 6 weeks. Why is that? Because I was assuming you've got 20 members and therefore you just need to replace the ones that leave. However, if you're a little short on members, you might want to kick it up and get one new member every month instead of every 6 weeks. Either way, thinking about members always makes sense. The other thing is that you probably were a little bit confused when it talked about the individual membership building program. That refers to something that's on applications for new members. If you are listed as an existing member as a sponsor for a new member, several times you get goodies from the Toastmasters online store. So the individual membership building program has to do with your sponsoring a new member. Let's go on to the next slide. See how we can get going. Daniel, you were running the video, right?
No, you were running the video, I thought.
Oh, it was operating all by itself. Oh, there we go. It was operating all by itself, whereas in the practice sessions, it didn't. All right, we've got to the next slide. Thank you. This has to do specifically with the VPM duties. And there are, let's see if there's one before that. Well, we'll go with this one. There are a number of different things here. No, I think this one, yeah, that skipped a number of them. There we go. We're fine now. There are 4 general responsibilities. One is turning guests into members. In order to do that, you've got to have guests in the first place. The second is managing your existing members. The third is to be part of that executive committee to help manage the club. And then we'll talk about the basics. Let's go to guests to members. Now, we've assumed that you've found guests, but in fact, a lot of people will say to me, I don't know where to find guests. So let me give you just a quick list of where you might find guests so that you're in a position to say, oh, I know lots of places. My favorite story is visiting a club that operates on the 9th floor, or at least it did before the pandemic, on the 9th floor of a 10-story building. A very nice 10-story building. And it was an open corporate club, which meant they could invite people from other organizations. They needed more members. And I said to them, have you contacted the other floors of this building? There's lots of companies. There are probably 1,000 people in that building. And they said, no. Well, why not? I also remember visiting a club that was in an industrial park. There were 50 other companies in the industrial park. lots of opportunities to find members. Doesn't have to take a lot of time. Most of it is just thinking, oh, I know where I could find some. Here are sources of prospects: friends of current members, co-workers of current members, former members. A whole lot of former members rejoin. You'd be surprised how many former members end up rejoining. Former guests, if they were interested once, they may be interested again. People who live or work nearby, people who are similar to other members. If you've got 3 accountants in your group, maybe a couple more accountants would be interested in joining. One of my clubs has a number of engineers, and that has attracted other engineers to join. So even if somebody doesn't know anything about the club, they may well decide that, hey, this is my kind of club. The second thing here is help guests feel welcome. I have seen times when a guest comes in and nobody says hi to them. That's sad. Say hi. Some of these people are fantastically interesting people. Always welcome them. Provide hospitality. Give them membership information. And something that's not really listed here, except very vaguely in proactive communication, ask them what their goals are. What are they trying to accomplish by coming to a Toastmasters meeting? If they have goals, you'll know whether Toastmasters can meet those goals. So simply ask. They'll be glad to tell you. There's a reason why they're at the meeting. And if it has to do with improving their speaking skills or leadership skills, then go with it. In one of my clubs, we once had somebody who joined because she wanted to make her acting skills better. And that sounded like a good fit, but she kept wanting to do performances rather than give speeches. And it turned out it wasn't so good a fit. Therefore, I suggest what you do is you proactively communicate and say, what are you looking for? Member management. Notice it says recruit new members. Before you do that, you have to find new guests. You can only recruit members from the ranks of guests. Some of these things I don't think are very useful to go into other than that. They're awfully vague, but the idea is get the members in and keep them, and people will be happy. Club management. Monitor your member number. I'm surprised at how many VPMs are not aware of how many members there are in their club. Toastmasters wants 20 members because they feel that's the perfect number to keep a club running well. You can have more, but you should have around 20 members. As you drop short of that, you end up having to have multiple rules for meetings. And when you get down to 12 members or less, you're in danger of not being able to operate. Toastmasters International says that if you drop down to 7 or below, they're going to suspend you after 2 different dues periods. So therefore, you really have to stay with at least 8 members. And that means that making membership a high priority is very important. If you've got 12 members or below, a club qualifies for a club coach. But there's always a shortage of people willing to act as club coaches. So if your club needs a club coach, contact your club president and your area director and try to get set up in line so that you can get a club coach as soon as there's one available. Strategizing member building doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself. And obviously hold yourself accountable and hold others accountable doesn't mean that you should be blaming people. This is not a finger pointing thing. It's primarily a matter of saying who has a responsibility, all of us, and how can I help get other people to participate? And usually what I found is when people don't do their part, they don't carry the load, it's because they don't know what they need to be doing. An awful lot of people have no idea what they need to do for their job. So if you can help by saying, all I need you to do is X and it will only take 4 minutes, you're more likely to get people to do what you need. We are going to see how applications get filled out. We won't have much time to go through with them, but that is something that we're going to spend a little time on. The next thing is ask guests to join. This brings me to something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the sales process. I once spent many, many years ago, 5 years as a vice president of marketing for a firm. And what I can tell you about Toastmasters is I am struck by how much most people hate sales. They didn't join Toastmasters to learn about sales. But for Toastmasters, it's actually really easy because Toastmasters is such a terrific program, it almost sells itself. So it's not like you have to do a whole lot. The whole sales process consists really of two things. The first is trust, and the second is finding out if the product serves the needs of a guest. To find out if the product serves the needs, you just ask them the question. Is this serving your needs? What is it you want to get out of Toastmasters? And if they tell you, I really want to be a better public speaker, it's going to serve their needs. Then you simply need to build trust. And the building of the trust is you put on a meeting and you show them that you guys aren't ogres, you're real ordinary people, and they would enjoy being with you. Once those two things are done, then you do the third thing, which is ask guests to join. In the sales world, that's called ask for the order. It's not hard to do because most of those people will be interested in joining. Some may say, oh, I need to think about it. Well, that's fine. But there's no reason not to tell them at the very first meeting, I think you'd be a great part of our club. Would you like to join? And you can sign them up right then and there. You can get a credit card and you can make them a member. We'll go into that in a little more detail. The third thing on this list is know your dues. You can hardly bring in members if you don't know the dues. In some clubs, the president or the treasurer takes care of handling the applications themselves, but the VPM ought to know the dues process in detail because that's part of the questions. Attending officer training, you're here, and Club Central for Club Business will cover that. So here is a resume of the most important things a VPM does. And I'll give you a chance just to read over them briefly. This is something that some of these other people may also do within the club. And the thing that you'll notice I've focused on the most is number 4, lead the process of converting guests to members. You need to find those guests by getting names and converting them to members. So these are the important things that you do. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. I have found that being a VP of membership really isn't a heavy time commitment. Even VPE, which is probably the heaviest time commitment of all the roles, doesn't take that much time once you know what you're doing. Toastmasters feels that I should cover transferable skills. And what by that they mean that when you're VPM, you're going to learn a lot of stuff that can be transferred to your job. For my purposes, what I say to you is, this should be on your resume. If you are looking for a leadership role, why not put it on your resume that you are a vice president of membership? And here are things that you have learned. You have developed the skills, what they call acumen. You've developed business acumen with regard to interacting with officers and getting goals done. Organizational development, you know what your place is and you fulfill your role. The business process, keeping your business open and thriving. And professional development, you understand about the important soft skills that so many people want. So take this seriously. Transferable skills can go on your resume. There is a tool, we've already talked about the moments of truth, but there is another tool that's valuable, and that is the Club Leadership Handbook. This is something that I'm asking Gary Lockwood to post on the chat because I found it when I was a new officer, I found it extremely valuable. Actually, there used to be separate handbooks for each officer Now there's one handbook that covers all of the officers. And it not only tells you what each officer does, it has troubleshooting ideas in case you have one of the common problems that a VPM runs into. It'll explain how the district works. Remember, club, area, division, district. It'll explain the highlights of the educational program, new member inductions, club officer installation, speech contests, you name it. It tries to cover everything briefly. It's a really useful tool. And when I gave this talk in a practice session a couple months ago to a group of people, most had not heard of it. So I do suggest that it's a hidden treasure. Go for it. Now we get into the nitty-gritty of how to use Toastmasters International site. There's some things you can do as VPM and some things you can't do. For example, you really can't manage Basecamp. You cannot manage the Pathways program. That is limited to the VP of Education, the president, and the secretary. But there are things of importance that you can do. And if you go to Toastmasters.org, the Toastmasters International site, this is what you will see, a front page that looks like this. And if you click on the part called Leadership Central, you'll see there's, my gosh, what is that? There's 15 or 16 different items you can click on. And we're going to see what happens if you click on Club Central and Club Officer Tools. You will, however, also notice if you go to the far right, it says Distinguished Performance Reports, and that's how you can get to Distinguished Performance Reports to see how your club is doing on the Distinguished Club program. Toastmasters International has a whole lot of things that are of value, and we're just going to look at two, but it's worth your while to just browse around from time to time. Those of you who are either lawyers or accountants or have an interest in those fields, there's even one called Legal and Tax Compliance. I always wondered about these things for my club, and it turns out Toastmasters does know about that. So I do suggest that you can learn a lot of the thinking that Toastmasters has put into things. Here's what happens if you click on Club Officer Tools. It takes you to a page with a menu of items that you can click on so that you can find information you need about your role or other club officer roles. You'll notice there are club officer tutorials, things like the video that we saw, membership building information, and the like. There are actually manuals that Toastmasters has turned out, not speaking manuals, but manuals to instruct you on how to help build your club. How to rebuild a club that's fallen in membership is another one. So there are club officer tools of value, and it's a site that you can go to. Here's Club Central. Now, as I said, you cannot submit educational awards. That's got to be left to the VPE usually, or the president or the secretary. But you can submit payment for a new member. You can check the club roster to see if a particular member is paid up, because the club roster will tell you whether a particular member has paid their dues. You can check all sorts of things, including the bottom right, administrative reports, where you can get a list of all the officers that have ever been an officer of your club. There are other informational things here too that you can check on as well. And I'd say it's valuable for you to know what's here. If for some reason you find that you're not getting many clicks or many people coming as guests from the Toastmasters International website, maybe you don't have an address, or maybe your club is listed as a closed club or something like that, you could check that here. Some people may find that other clubs are getting most of the visits from potential guests because they have an address that's easier to locate, let's say on Google or something like that. So club management. Here we've got the membership application. As I say, you may or may not be the one who fills out most of them. But the membership application is important for a number of reasons. You can hardly bring in a member if you don't know what the application has on it. So I suggest you be familiar with that. We have a written application, and there's one prime reason for that. Actually, there's two. One is you probably will spell names wrong if you don't see everything written down. But the important thing that Toastmasters particularly cares about is that on rare occasions, they may have to kick someone out. And the membership application basically requires that you sign something saying, I'll behave myself. And therefore, if you don't behave yourself, they have the right to kick you out. They want to have this application signed with a real signature. But that doesn't happen very often. And mostly what you'll be concerned about are the dues and fees. So let's go to that. Here is what the dues portion of the application looks like. There's a $20 new member fee. Now, a lot of times people say, well, what happens if somebody quits and comes back? There are two answers to that. One is if they're in Toastmaster International's computerized database, they don't have to pay a new member fee. Although you have the power in your club constitution to make rules about that, but hardly anybody does. So under normal circumstances, you'll probably be waiving that new member fee if they're still in the Toastmasters database. However, they only started that computerized database 4 or 5 years ago. So if somebody joins after 10 years, they won't be found. They'll have to pay the new member fee. Secondly, membership dues. Dues are due every 6 months, but Toastmasters doesn't make you pay 6 months worth of dues if you're joining up at the end of the period. So it's pro rata. You pay for every month that you're a member. That makes sense, right? You'll notice it says district and undistricted. People often ask, what's undistricted? Almost all clubs are in districts, but there are a number of clubs in far-flung parts of the world that are not in any district, and they're called undistricted. Districted clubs are ones that have a district, and your district is Founders District. Therefore, that's all you pay attention to is the districted fee. Now, what happens if somebody joins at the end of the 6-month period? You could have them sign up for 1 month, but why not just sign them up for 7 months instead? Because it's sort of an insult to sign up and pay money, and then 30 days later, they're asking for more money. So why not sign them up and get them in for 7 months? Because 1 month isn't enough time for them to evaluate this experience. Sign them up for 7 months. That way it works better. And then the club dues and fees worksheet on the right has a place for club dues. Some clubs have club dues. Other clubs don't have club dues. If your club has club dues on top of membership dues, then you're going to charge for that. Some people prorate them, some people don't. I mean, some clubs prorate them and some don't. A little bit of a complication for you as a vice president of a membership is that you can't just take a credit card for all 3 of these items, for the new member fee, the international membership dues, and the club dues, because Toastmasters doesn't have a procedure for that. They've been working on it, and I expect probably next year they will have a procedure where you can have a new member pay club dues to the international organization, and the club dues portion will be credited back to the club. But that doesn't exist yet. So as a result, a lot of clubs want checks, and then of course they take the check, they keep the club dues part, and they forward the rest of it to Toastmasters International. If you use a credit card, you can only do the new member fee and the membership dues like that, and maybe for the club dues you get cash or check. So that's a complication, but maybe a year from now it won't be anymore, and people will breathe a sigh of relief if it can all be done in one transaction. By the way, when members renew, you forget about the new member fee, and you just do membership dues and the club dues. They want me to talk about Pathways a bit, even though Pathways is largely a VPE function. But there are some things you need to know as a VPM. One thing is that members don't enroll automatically. In my club, we once had a member, in one of my clubs, we once had a member that went through all of level 1 without ever opening Pathways. He just asked people to give him the evaluation form so he knew what the speech was about, and he gave his speeches. He didn't stick with the club. He wasn't part of the process. So I suggest that you check in with any new member and see that they have sat with the VPE and understand how Pathways works. Obviously, the younger a member, the more likely they are that they're very good with computerized apps, but other people may not be. And as a result, if they don't get into Pathways, if they're confused by it, that can be a problem. When Pathways first came into existence, there was a lot of controversy about it. It started in our district in December of 2017. That was 3 years ago. And I've noticed over time that fewer and fewer and fewer people think it's a problem. There were people who immediately said, oh, I'm never going to do Pathways. And now they're doing Pathways and they're fine with it. So what I would say to you is if you have somebody who's still reluctant, it means they may not remain as a member because they're not part of the program. And it's old news. It's been 3 years. If you wait much longer, they'll come out with an even newer program. So it's not new anymore. Just get people into it. As you know, there are all sorts of labs that have been set up by Founders District to help people if they need help with Pathways. What the kids do, of course, with computers is they just do trial and error until they figure it out. And Pathways is good for that. Just click on everything until you get to where you want to go. It works. Navigator is something probably you all know about, but it's in the slides, so I want to mention it briefly. If you are a brand new Toastmaster and you know nothing about Toastmasters, this is a great overview. It's in Pathways. You can't miss it. It's also outside of Pathways. You can find it if you simply go to the search box of Toastmasters.org, and it tells you the basics. Now, there's a problem with it because every club is a little different. And we had a new member recently who was religiously reading Navigator and following what it said about the meeting roles, but our club did things a tiny bit differently. So that is something to be remembered. It's a good thing for a brand new person to use, and it might even be good for an experienced member to go look through and say, oh, we could do this differently. But nevertheless, it isn't necessarily exactly how your club operates. Toastmasters International has a whole page on club quality. You'll notice at the bottom right, here is where you can access moments of truth, although clearly you've got moments of truth in the chat box, and a variety of other things that you can access. District leader resources. You can find the club leadership handbook here, but that's already been downloaded. And there's a variety of different things you can get here. Personally, what I would suggest is you can go to these pages, but you can also just go to Toastmasters.org and in the search box, just type in whatever you're interested in, and you'll probably get a whole list of resources that way. For example, there's a book, not a book, a manual called Membership Growth. So if you type in Membership Growth, it'll lead you to that manual, which is a pretty good one. Here are some key dates. Dues renewal is in March. March is dues month. You want to collect dues as soon as possible because with the pandemic still going, it's possible some of your members will be financially stressed or have other issues. And so you want to know if you're going to have a problem with collecting dues. So start a little bit early and keep reminding people without being annoying about it, and bring in the dues. The annual business meeting, international speech contest, and spring conference, you'll all notice middle of May. This is what used to be called the district conference. Now it's going to be online. We have both the international speech contest and the Tall Tales contest. that are coming up this spring. And you can attend, of course, the Founders District Conference if you wish. And the annual business meeting is where the Founders District does its business and, among other things, will choose its new district officers for the coming year. That brings us right on schedule to questions. Now, I haven't been able to look at the questions from the chat room. Daniel or Gary, have you been able to look at those and give me an idea of what some good questions are?
We have not received any question yet. Everyone, please feel free to type it in the chat.
Wonderful. If anybody has a question, that is something we can cover right now. I know I covered the material rather quickly, but on the other hand, we have a very strong schedule because they shut us up at 11:25 to open up the next room.
Please also feel
What
free
were the
to
last
unmute
two
yourself.
dates on the slide is the question from Martha Shepard. The last two dates on the slide were May 15th. You should find that you're going to have a lot of information supplied to you about the district conference in the spring. But those last two dates were May 15th.
I have a question. I would like to know if you have any suggestions on how to celebrate accomplishments while we're on Zoom. I can't hand any certificate. I can't give anything out.
That's a good question. And I've received some other questions as well. Let me finalize my answer to Martha Shepard because she asked, what's the last date? Both of those dates were May 15th. May 13th was the first date of those three dates, and the second two were both May 15th. Now, Ursula, you have an excellent question. What can you do? You can send electronic certificates. Granted, somehow electronic certificates don't look as important as ribbons, but you could, of course, send those ribbons in the mail. If your club has, what does the stamp cost these days? Close to 50 cents? You could send, I'm sorry?
At least.
Yeah, you could send that in the mail. Also, I think just giving the recognition in a meeting counts for a lot. I know that when people are given a hand, when people are recognized in the meeting, it's a big deal. When people finish a level, they get all excited because everybody has recognized them. I finished a level. So if you wish to send it in the mail, that's one way of doing it, but just giving them your sincere love over the Zoom app is as close as you can get. We're not doing hugs at the moment, but after all, it is a pandemic. We have to make a few adjustments.
Okay.
Nitu asks, what is the Smedley Award? On that slide, there were three different awards that are based on what clubs do at different times of the year. One is in the early part of the year, one's in the middle part of the year, and one is in the later part of the year. And if you bring in a certain number of members, your club gets goodies. So that's what those awards are. You can find them at Toastmasters International, and they will be publicized a bit, but the idea is that your club can get goodies like money toward a new banner, that kind of a thing, if you bring in members. Now, you should be bringing in members anyway, but it doesn't hurt to get an award for it. Let's see what other questions we have.
Randy, there was also a question about PowerPoints of your presentation. Are those going to become available for people?
I've just seen that. I believe the PowerPoints will be shared. That's a good question because they were put on a special site for me. If you leave your name and email address with Gary, I will undertake to get you the PowerPoint if possible.
Okay.
Yeah, in the past, at least for the makeup meeting.
I'm sorry, Daniel?
Oh, in the past, at least for the makeup training, we will post the video and the PowerPoint slide. Usually the tab master will take care of it. This time, I don't know who will take care of it, but we will publish that information later on. usually we will put it on Facebook with some link with the video and other information.
Yeah, I see the question is here about will the recording be posted someplace, and that's something that I think is left to the tech master or the room monitor to handle that. So if you don't know where it is, perhaps you can find out and give us that information.
Yeah, we'll take care of that later. Because this time the room was actually hosted by Ken Spears, so I have to ask him to download the file and then edit it before we post. But we will get those to everybody later on. Slide-wise, yeah, we actually have all of your email address when you sign up. If you provided that information, most likely we can send a share link to everybody. That would be the easiest way. We just give us a little bit of time to generate the report of everybody who email address. We get all of that already when you register for the training.
Okay. Here's a question from John Hogan. Can you walk us through how to sign up a new member virtually? The first thing you would do, John, once somebody says, I want to sign up, is you would email them or text them or somehow get that electronic application to them and then get the application back from them. Once you've got that written application, you can proceed. Now, some people may be hesitant to give you a credit card number that gets sent through email. So that may have to be done, that portion may have to be done over the phone or otherwise. But you can get the information via email or phone or text. And then once you've got that information, if you have their credit card, you can use their credit card to pay for their membership insofar as you've got the new membership fee and the 6-month dues, the membership dues. With regard to the club dues, that you're going to have to collect separately. You probably don't have a credit card for your club, but you can ask for a check, or even just, if it's $3 or $4, even that's probably not terrible to send through the mail. So that's how you would sign up a new member virtually. There are clubs that have been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years, and it works pretty well for them. The next question is,
how do you get a signature?
There are 2 ways, I suppose. One is, the first way you can do that is to have them print it out, sign it, scan it back in, and send it. Another way you could do that is with an electronic signature, and then you can confirm that over the phone. And so you have that. The actual application is for the club's files, so you simply have to be convinced that it has been signed and approved. So what kind of a signature you get, that's a bit flexible. Going back to emailing the certificates, a question from Deirdre. I don't have certificates on hand. I would suggest you make some up. They are something that I don't use because in our club, we do it orally. And we give people a big hand and we give them lots of praise orally. But if you feel you need certificates, I would think you could probably make them up. Nito again asks, what is the Smedley Award? I forget which months you get credit for it. There is 1 month, I think it's September and October, you get credit for bringing in 5 new members. And then there's, is it November and December, and then April and May, something like that. Mary, do you happen to know which months those are?
Which months what are? What's the question?
The membership, the club membership programs. Do you remember what months they are in?
Oh, there's 3 of them. There's Beat the Clock, which is the last 3 months. And the first one is, I don't remember the names of them, but I think there's either 3 or 4, and I only remember 3. Beat the Clock is at the end, and it's either for the last 3 months or the last 4 months. So the answer to your question is no, I don't remember the exact dates, but they're about 3 months or 4 months in between.
Mary, thank you.
Randy,
Daniel has a comment saying that we will share video recording after editing. Martha Shepard says, I earned my Triple Crown last year, but I never got my pin. Who do I talk to? I would say your best bet right now is to talk to David Hosmer. He's in charge of the educational program for the district. So David Hosmer would be your contact for that.
That's a correct answer. That's correct. David Hosmer is in charge of Triple Crown, and Julie Murphy has been putting it on our monthly, which comes out on Wednesday, the people who earn those. So if you don't see it right away, I would check with Julie Murphy and David Hosmer to check that out.
Deirdre asks, where do I get the electronic application? And the answer to that question is if you go to Toastmasters International's website, toastmasters.org, and just put in membership application, it'll come up. Now you'll get it in 18 different languages. You just have to look for the English language one, but you can find it there. Do I have any thoughts? Here's another question from Ryan. Do I have any thoughts, guidance on having a prospective member demonstrate some commitment, such as attending 2 meetings before offering them an application for membership? Ryan, I would say that that is probably only an issue if you've got somebody who you question would have some lack of commitment. A lot of guests do attend 2 meetings before they choose to join. If you've got somebody that doesn't seem like they understand the concept very well, or if they don't look like they're likely to want to be a participating member, it might be a thought. Of course, you would want to make sure that you don't look like you're discriminating against anybody. So if you decide to do that, you could see how that works out. I sort of think it's not necessary if you feel that they are likely to become a competent member. And if you don't, you should probably discuss it with them. I rarely see people who insist on becoming members, so it's mostly a matter of communicating with them, I would say. Indira is saying we collect dues via Venmo for those new members not wanting to provide a credit card. Yes, Venmo is another method you can use. So if you are not using Venmo, that is an option. You may want to check it out. Thank you for reminding me, Indira. Daniel reminds us that there are 2 electronic applications. And so he gives you information about that in the chat box. Tim Suhu asked for David Hosmer's contact information. He said he didn't get his Triple Crown either. I wonder if Daniel or Gary can put up David Hosmer's contact information.
That might take a little bit.
Iris Liu has just put up the Smedley Award is August 1st to September 30th. Talk Up Toastmasters February 1 to March 31st, and Beat the Clock May 1 to June 30th. Thank you, Iris, for that. So those are the 3 different club membership awards. And Ryan, you asked a question that I think is probably answered by Daniel's posts that came in just before you put yours up. And Hope, this is not LACE for President Training. It's LACE for Vice President of Membership Training. LACE for President Training is, I think Mark Simon is doing that. Now I think we've run out of time for questions. Is that right, Daniel?
Not quite. We still have a few more minutes.
All right. Well, I think we've actually run out of the questions themselves, and we have a hard stop in 10 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, we
so
are.
What I'm going to see.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, time for closing.
Yeah.
However, I'd like to mention a couple of things about the forms. There are really 2 forms. One form is the traditional form where we can print it out, fill it out, and then mail to the Toastmaster headquarters. And that's the required form that we need to file with our club. The second one is an online form that we can just fill out online at the Club Central, and that allows us to add the member quickly and then process the payment quickly. However, even if you do that second form, you still need the first form. So it's not. So the first form is a must-have. The second form is a nice-to-have that allows you to add the member quickly, especially for people who are dual membership or reinstating member. I can take care of that in about 5 seconds. I just look up their name, and then all the information will show up online, and then you just click add member, and then I say payment. So in about 1 minute, I can add a person and pay if they are existing member, because all the information are already on the website. But then you still need that first paper form. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing about payment, Venmo is popular, but it's not safe, because Venmo is going to share our payment information online like a social network. It's kind of like, think about Facebook paying stuff through Facebook, but Venmo is owned by PayPal. I will suggest people use Zelle, which is what I prefer to use for my club, because Zelle is a cooperation by all the major banks, and they keep our information secure. So that's something I would suggest for all the VPM and anyone who is processing payment for your club. Okay, I'm sorry, I take up a little bit of time.
No problem, Daniel. You're the tech master, and that's a tech question, so I think that's wonderful. Now, I think I have just a few minutes, not many, to close up the presentation. So I'd like to leave you with one thought, and that is, if you're going to do just one thing, and you should do a few more, but if you're going to do just one thing, what I suggest you do is think about getting in those guests so that you can turn them into members. You'll probably find it's not hard to turn them into members if your club is operating at all like Toastmasters clubs are supposed to. So it's just a matter of thinking about where the guests are coming from. When I was VP event, I've been VPM 3 times, and the first time I really got into what my success ratio was. How many guests could I turn into members? But the truth is, you don't have to worry about whether a guest becomes a member. If you've got tons of guests, you're going to get your share of members out of it anyway. So think about guests, and that will lead to success. That's all I want to say about guests. Now, Daniel, can you? Yes.
Andy, I have an answer to your question about the Triple Crown. I called David Hosmer, and David Hosmer says they're going to be handed out at the next DC meeting, at the district council meeting, at the next DEC meeting. DEC, not DC. So the next DEC meeting, which is the District Executive Committee meeting, and I think that we have one of those every 3 months. And let's see, this is January, February, March, April. It might be May 15th. So May 15th, when we do the business meeting, or when we do the international speech contest or the speech contest, it may be that they are going to be doing it at that meeting. It could be actually at the annual business meeting that we do that. So it might be best to check with your area director or your division director or David Hosmer himself to see when you're going to get the Triple Crown. But they do that all at one time because they know then how many to order if they don't have enough on backlog.
Mary, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question that I'll ask, one more question that I'll answer, and we're running out of time. So Tim Suhu asked a question about the demographic that's behind me, about Toastmasters demographics. Most people don't seem to know this, but if you go to Toastmasters International and you look for the information hub, Toastmasters does all sorts of surveys of its members, and there's all sorts of data that you can get. And I find it valuable because it tells me who are the most likely people to want to become members. There's also a very interesting survey they do of people who stop being members as to why they've stopped being members. And it's fascinating. For years, the most likely reason people stopped being a member was because nobody asked them for the renewal dues. That has finally changed, but it was amazing. Now, I think we're running out of time. Daniel, I wonder if we can run the closing poll so that people get their credit.